There are two slide presentations this week. The first one is leadership communications. This coordinates or associates with the self-assessment on leadership communication style, and this is the one that deals with the readings from Phillips on Lincoln's communication. So um, after this one, there's another slide presentation, number 7, that deals with ethics. Ethics is, again, a very important topic, but very different from leadership communications in feel and look. Ethics associates with a longer post that's a required course or program, MBA program learning objective on integrity and ethics. That is in the second post for this week. You can work on both posts at the same time. So anyway, here's leadership communications. Let's get to it. Some of you have mentioned that communication is very important, and I want to buttress that point with some of these juicy quotes. I love the idea that Epictetus said that we have 2 ears and 1 mouth, so we can listen twice as much as we speak, because active listening is a very important part of communication. And it's love George Bernard Shaw's that sometimes communication is compounded by the fact that we don't really understand what we're communicating, the illusion that has taken place, and very often also the communication that we think has taken place is perceived as something different by followers. So needless to say, communication is a big part of leadership, and I want you to, well, let's think about it a little bit. The readings this week are all from Phillips, chapters 13, 14, and 15. The first one, chapter 13, is on the art of public speaking. And the emphasis here is Lincoln prepared his public speeches very, very meticulously. He was able to visualize how the words would come out. He was able to connect in his visualization with the emotions of his followers. He was able to connect the emotions of his followers with the values that he meant to portray. And in all of his public speaking, he was meticulous. He was consistent. His values, he would say the same thing to everybody, same thing every time he talked, maybe using different languages, different stories, but there's a great consistency in his values. Now, the last 2 points. Lincoln was able to speak in 2 different levels, at least 2 different levels, and probably as many different levels as there were audiences. But in very plain language and maybe a very academic or scholarly way, he could communicate his meaning directly and clearly. His Cooper Union speech probably is just a very logical, laid out argument. But he also had another level, and that comes through in some of the beautiful vignettes and stories about Lincoln. He would use a story, and he would use humor, a humorous story, to sort of emphasize his point and show another way of cutting through to the root of the problem, another way to express his ideas in a way that everybody would make sense. Now, as a farmer, or growing up in a farming family from Springfield, Illinois, or in Illinois, Lincoln was able to use a lot of farming analogies or animal stories, and everybody could understand these at the time. So I guess a challenge for all of you is to, develop this ability to make public speaking. And when you develop public speaking by practicing, so practice whenever you can. When you public speak, get your whole emotional sense together to bring your points together. Use gestures, use voice, use everything to get your emotions or feelings across. And try to get your points across in two ways. One, maybe with a logical argument, and two, figure out a story or a vignette or maybe an exercise or a dialogue or some other way to get the point across. Chapter 14, I just want to emphasize what I already mentioned about storytelling, but two more points. One is humor. The humor is hard to do, incidentally, because as any comedian or as anybody who uses humor knows, what's funny in one audience is not going to be funny in another audience. So humor, if used successfully, that means that you as a speaker are able to connect with the culture of your audiences. Second point is, humor is not just a ha-ha funny thing for Lincoln and for a leader, a serious leader. Humor is a way to diffuse opposition. Humor is a way to convince people and influence their thinking. And I guess what you want to do is make your humor catchy and make it so that people will remember it and so that it rings true. Anyway, develop those skills. Good luck. Preach a vision and continually reaffirm it. Chapter 15. There's a message here. When I teach my strategic management classes and I talk about how a leader can affect the culture of an organization or how a leader can destroy the culture of an organization, I use this type of thinking. First of all, leaders can actually change, improve the culture of a culturally defunct organization. Take a value that you want, like hard work or integrity. Let's say integrity. Then develop, first of all, a vision of an organization with integrity. An organization that's trustworthy, that keeps its word, that follows principles, that determines what is right in its own organization and the way it treats everyone else. Preach that vision. Now, that vision is going to be useless if the rest of the organization or the rest of the organizational policies, procedures, and so forth are not reinforcing that vision. So there are two ways to reinforce the vision. First of all, preach the vision of integrity. Second of all, fire everybody in top management who has not demonstrated a history of the highest level of integrity. Let's call it crystallize at the top. Make sure that the people leading your organization are absolutely exhibit the highest level of integrity. If that were not true, then your preachings will be useless. The second thing you do is in all of your organizational procedures and all of your policies, integrity is reflected. And a good example would be promotion policies. In promotion decisions, executives must exhibit highest levels of integrity. If they don't, they should not get promoted. And once you start promoting executives who have low integrity but maybe have high energy or generate lots of earnings or do lots of other good stuff, then what you're telling your organization is integrity doesn't matter, energy does, or getting lots of sales does, or something like that. So, clear statement, but the statement has to be reinforced by having top managers who absolutely exemplify that vision, and B, have all organizational procedures, including executive performance, executive evaluation, and so forth, reflect that value. So, this organizational vision that Phillips preaches, a clear, concise statement of the direction of your organization, is only meaningful to the extent that it's reflected in the top managers and the organizational procedures. Okay, two challenges to finish off this slide presentation. Please practice public speaking and storytelling. I'm an introvert. I am not a very comfortable public speaker. I've been doing this for 20 years or so, so I guess I can claim that I've got some practice doing it, and I don't regret any second of it. I have really become a lot more comfortable speaking in front of classes, and I'd like to think that I'm successful at getting my point across a little bit, only because I've practiced. Use humor. I'm not very good at humor, but I try, and the trick is to use humor to complement, to make what you're saying interesting, and use it to emphasize a point, not as a distraction from your point. Lincoln, super at this, and he's got a real ability to connect the stories, the bank of stories he can tell, with the message that he wants to with the message he wants to represent. And self-abasing humor is okay. The idea that the story in the book where God would not accept Lincoln into heaven because even though he's a praying man, God would think he was joking. So he's a joker. And Lincoln loved that kind of humor. Very good. Challenge 2. Develop a vision for your organization. Link this future vision to the past and present. Now, 2 points here. The future vision to the past and present is consistent with what I said in the last slide, with selecting a value, saying this is where we want the organization to go, saying that in the past we've been successful because of this value, and then the ways to make it consistent, the ways to reflect it in the top managers and in the procedures within the organization. That is a way to ensure that in the future that value will be respected. Very nice description right at the last couple of pages of the book of the Gettysburg Address. How it's a very short speech, but is very referential, very effective at linking the present to the past and the future. That's the way to make your vision stick, and the way to convince others that the vision is the right thing to do. Something to think about, at least. As leaders, you want to change things. Good luck.